Hello folks, Dick Fairburn here. Last week I talked about shotgun loads for self-defense, home defense. Mostly buckshot, but also talked about birdshot. Some people recommend birdshot in close environments like apartment houses. Didn't look real good with what we did last week. But there's another aspect, not just the group size, not the pattern that your shotgun produces, but also how deep do these pellets penetrate. The FBI 8-part test recommends a minimum of 12 inches of penetration, generally a maximum of 18, to make sure your projectiles are going to get in, disrupt vital organs. And this came, Dr. Marty Fackler developed that test with the FBI. Dr. Marty Fackler, when I met him at a conference in DC, got me started on this water jug testing, and it has been calibrated and found to be about 95+% correlation to shooting these projectiles into a 10% gelatin base. Of course, that's just a simulation of living tissue. This system works pretty accurately up to 15 to 1800 feet per second, which will include all the shotgun loads we're gonna fire today. It breaks down beyond that, so when you get into rifle category, up around that magic 2000 feet per second mark, things change. We can still predict penetration in the water, but it is more difficult to predict how much they're going to fragment and how much is going to be retained. But if you want to shoot your pistol velocity loads and test them for both expansion, fragmentation, and penetration, you can shoot them in water jugs. Early in my YouTube career, I did a dedicated video on these shooting into water jugs. It was not my best video by any means, so I'm going to go over some of that stuff again today. But this is a very cheap and very reliable way to predict what your projectiles from rifles, pistols, shotguns are going to do as long as they're below about 1718 feet per second. Over the years, several of us have accumulated a lot of live fire shooting incident reports with handguns. A lot of those involve officers, because officer-involved shootings are the #1 category of people being shot with handgun loads. There are a smattering of buckshot shootings in those, but in the ones that I have collected and the ones I've seen others collect, buckshot represents a really, really small percentage of those shootings. So realistically, we don't have all that great a feel for how well buckshot performs against humans at normal defense ranges. We've seen it shot into gelatin. I've shot it into water before, particularly double-aught buck. But we're going to shoot the flight control federal double-aught buck today. We're going to shoot standard double-aught buck in a low recoil configuration. I'm going to fire #4 buck that is not low recoil, it's full power. And then I'm going to go to that #5 shot load that I used last time, which in my opinion probably was not going to be effective beyond about 3 yards. So we're going to see how deeply these penetrate in the water, and that's going to give you an indication of which load you really should stake your life on. I'm going to take all these shots at 7 yards for a little bit of consistency. They're going to be fairly tight patterns for like this first one. This is Federal Flight Control 9 pellet double-aught buck, high velocity. Okay, we started with 6 jugs. You can see the flight control wad here. I will attempt to find, this is probably the first jug, it's the most destroyed. And it's hard to tell, but the wad might have gone in, probably did go into that first jug. Here's one pellet that's underneath. There are other pellets in jug 5, just one. And it broke the front of the next jug. So it went completely through 5. You can see there, through 5. It broke the front of jug number 6, and there's also some skimming damage here as well. Only 2 pellets were caught, one in between the jugs and one in jug 5. And I will show you later the way the formula works. You need to keep track of the jugs that were fully penetrated, and then the jug that, in this case, the last pellet was found in, number 5. So we need to know if it marked the back of it, if it broke the back of it, if it marked or broke the front of the one behind that it was not able to penetrate. And that gets us within 2 inches of penetration estimates. So that was Federal Flight Control. You can see some flat spots here on these pellets from where they probably ran against each other down the bore, and very possibly where they impacted in. 2 copper-plated pellets were caught. All right, this is double-aught buck, low recoil, 9 pellet. I've added 1 more jug, so we have 7 just to make sure we're going to catch everything. This is probably our first jug. There were 7, 6, 5. There were impacts into 5. Okay, 2 copper-plated double-aught buck pellets in jug number 5. Full penetration on all the others. Now we look to the next jug. There are no marks on that jug. So it fully penetrated 4. The furthest pellet was found in number 5. And again, a lot of these probably sprayed out to the sides. Buckshot is especially hard to catch in this medium. Fully penetrated 4, found in number 5. I will record that and we'll go to the next. All right, this is standard velocity, number 4 buckshot. All right, this is number 4 buckshot. Started with 7 jugs again. 6, 5, 4. There's a mark here, and I would have to call it broke because there's just a little bit of water coming out. 7, 5, 7, 6, 5, 4. Jug number 3, we have a number of pellets. All right, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 pellets in jug number 3. You can see the pattern, some high, some low. The front of number 4 is broken, just weeping a tiny bit of water, but there is no penetration. So through 2, found in 3, broke the next of number 4. This is number 5 birdshot from 7 yards, which I would say is about maximum effective range for birdshot. Number 5 birdshot. All right, this was number 5 birdshot at 7 yards, and really from my patterning test, I'm not sure it's all that going to be that all the effective past about 3 yards. So 7, 6, 5, no marks. 4, no marks. Here's jug number 3. It is peeing, so it has some penetrations. And there are pellets in jug number 3. All right, there are 4 number 5 pellets in jug number 3. There are several more scattered about. So they came out the sides or just barely made it through jug number 2. There are no marks on jug 4. But there are marks on the back of number 3. Marks on the back of number 3. I'll show you how I use this form. Okay, here's the form I use to run this process. You notice I filled it in 12 gauge. This is a reload that I loaded up with 1 3/8 ounces of number 5 shot buffered pellets, high velocity. I'll check that data when I get home. Fired from an Ithaca 37 20-inch barrel length. I'm going to put today's temperature and today's date on here as when I finish this up. Bullet, or pellets, excuse me, were found in jug number 3. Jugs fully penetrated prior to being that is 2 times 6 is 12. Terminal addition of mark the back, so 6 inches. So 12 times 6 equals 18 inches of water penetration. Now we'll take this 18 number and we will divide that by 1.55. So we're going to get about 12 inches of penetration, more or less, probably a little less. If it's over 1,800 feet per second, I use a conversion factor of 1.3, so it's going to penetrate further with rifle bullets, but the rifle bullets are going to be more torn up, so there will be less retained weight, there will be more expansion, more fragmentation. So the rifle data is not really accurate, but at the velocity range of up to about 1,700 feet per second, these should be very, very almost identical to what you're going to get in 10% calibrated gelatin. So those terminal additions, if there's no mark in the jug it was found in, then we only give it 3, half the penetration. If it marked the back, we give full penetration of 6 inches. That's what we saw here. If it broke the back, there's water weeping out, we give it 6.75, so a little bit more. If it marked the next jug, 7.5. If it broke the next jug, 8. And that's been trial and error in a lot of water jugs. And also in 10% calibrated gelatin at the Hornady Underground Labs a number of years ago. So it's been calibrated to be pretty effective. So here are your terminal additions if you want to freeze this frame and jot this down. No mark is 3, marked back is 6, broke back 6.75, marked the next jug 7.5, broke the next jug but did not penetrate into it, 8 inches. If you would like, if you want to send me an email, I'll be glad to email you a Word document of this form if you want to do your own research. Okay folks, in these last 2 videos I've explored the effectiveness of shotgun loads. First time we looked at how they patterned, how far they were going to be effective. And in this one I looked at penetration. How well are these individual pellets going to do what we need them to do? And it's been a learning curve for me. I mean, my observations over the years of people shooting these things on firing ranges, training ranges, was that buckshot effectiveness was about 15 to 20 yards with most open choke shotguns and with most buckshot loads. And I think that's about what I found. The flight control wad from Federal changes that. It takes that effectiveness out to 25, maybe 35 yards, or at least with the buckshot load that I tested. I believe the critical defense load shotgun shells from Hornady use either the same wad as the Federal or something similar. Haven't tested them, but a couple of friends have told me that they perform very well, perhaps as good as the Federal. So if you're looking to protect yourself with buckshot from a 12 gauge or even a 20 gauge, the flight control wad from Federal, test some Hornadys yourself and see if they're as good. That really looks like the way to go. That greatly expands your protective range. In terms of terminal performance, I mentioned that the FBI standard is from 12 to 18. That was Dr. Fackler helped them develop that a number of years ago. Here's what I found today in the water jugs. Now gelatin testing of the buckshot is a much better way to do it. This water jug system works really well for single projectiles, handgun bullets, even rifle bullets. It does not capture the effect of the buckshot pattern because that buckshot pattern is expanding as it goes down range. But once it hits that tissue simulator, the expansion out seems to increase dramatically. And we saw that with several of the pellets exiting those jugs and maybe making skim marks on the jugs further back. That pattern opens up pretty radically inside of the target. So what I'm capturing is the deepest penetrators. And with that flight control Federal load, the deepest penetration was in jug number 5. And when I run my terminal additions and everything, that comes up with a penetration of 20.6 inches. So that is perfectly adequate in terms of the 12-inch minimum. Can it be too much? Probably not. Now, bear in mind, all these would be the equivalent of shooting a 10% gelatin block, a bare gelatin block. There's no heavy clothing. There are no intervening obstacles like car windshields or the body metal of a vehicle. That's all going to degrade that penetration. So I would say that flight control 9 pellet load from Federal is an outstanding performer. I was not able to get my hands on any of the little recoil stuff. I think it will probably pattern as well or better, and I think it will still penetrate adequately. So that is the load I would look at personally. Then I shot standard 9 pellet double-aught buck low recoil, and as I mentioned, this has become widely accepted in law enforcement over the last 20 years or so, because these low recoil loads tend to pattern as well, and they're so much easier to manage in terms of recoil. Here, deepest, same, jug number 5. The terminal additions were a little bit less, so what I came up with here was about 17.4 inches. Now the bulk of those pellets are probably not going to reach that single deepest pellet range. So if that single pellet is going to 17 inches, then I'd say the bulk of these are probably going to be between 12 and 16, which is almost ideal. So that low recoil double-aught buck load, especially in a flight control pattern and copper plated, I think is going to do perfectly good in terms of terminal performance. Number 4 buck, this was a standard load from Winchester, so it's more recoil. 27 pellets of a smaller diameter. Much less penetration. Deepest was found in jug number 3. The terminal additions built into it, and I came up with that one pellet penetrating about 12.9 inches. That means the bulk of these pellets are not getting that far. They're probably going to be in the 8, 10, up to 12-inch penetration range. Again, bare gelatin. You add in heavy clothing, you add in any kind of intervening cover, then the number 4 buckshot is not going to be your best choice. I like number 4 buck. I have seen buckshot used on some animals when I lived in Wyoming. Double-aught buck worked perfectly well. Number 4 buck worked, in my opinion, way better than it seemed like it should. And I think that mass of pellets interacting closely on the torso of in one case a badger, that was shot. I've seen badgers take 30-06 loads and take off running down their hole. But that load of number 4 buck rolled that thing over 4 legs in the air faster than anything I've ever seen it kill. And a badger is an extremely tough animal to anchor. So even though we're not getting the kind of penetration with number 4 that we are with the double-aught buck, I think within reasonable range it is still deep enough and a very viable performer. And it does reduce any over-penetration concerns to some extent. Now, the big question that I had, I've seen people recommend it, I've seen people absolutely disrecommend it, and that's coarse birdshot used up close. Now my load was 1 3/8 ounces of number 5 buffered lead shot. You used to be able to find 4-shot, even 2-shot, sometimes even BB size shot, pretty commonly with lead loads. Those are pretty tough to come by nowadays because those heavy shot sizes are used for long-range duck shooting, goose shooting, and since the 80s that has had to been a non-toxic shot, typically steel. And I mean, I did not test any steel shot here. I've never really looked at it for penetration. Steel is much less dense than a pellet of lead, so it stands to reason you're going to get less penetration with it. I fired this at 7 yards. The 7-yard group or pattern last week was still fairly large. Only when I got into about 3 yards did I see that rat hole effect of all of that shot driving into one massive hole. So this is a worst case scenario, but at 7 yards the deepest pellet was found in jug number 3. And there were 4 of those number 5 shot in that jug. There was a lot of evidence that the jug before them captured a lot of those shot. But of course it's blown off the table and the shot are lost to be able to have an exam on. So the deepest was found in jug number 3 with the terminal additions. That works out to less than 12 inches. The deepest penetration was 11.6 inches. Probably the bulk of that stuff was going to go in 8 or 9 inches. Now, 8 or 9 inches in a frontal shot of a person not just wearing ordinary clothing, I would suspect is going to be almost instantly fatal. So that's going to be just an awesome, vicious wound in the center of a human being's chest. If you could get number 4 shot, if you can use a tighter choke and concentrate that even more, it could work. So I think coarse birdshot can work at close range and absolutely minimize any over-penetration concerns if you live in an apartment or townhouse or someplace where you're really concerned about what you're firing going through a couple layers of sheetrock, because most of the walls in those construction are just, 2 layers of sheetrock with some 2x4 metal or 2x4 wooden studs in between. So even birdshot, coarse birdshot could work. Number 4, I would recommend number 4s or larger. The very dense shots like heavy shot, which is actually a tungsten complex that is more dense than lead, is going to give you even deeper penetration. Those heavy shot loads can be very expensive, as much as $6 or $7 or $8 a shot. If you're really concerned about the overpenetration where you live, I think birdshot could work. I think I would be more inclined to go with number 4 buck. If overpenetration is not the concern, then I think double-aught buck is going to give you your deepest penetration. And with a flight control wad, or the kind of wads used by Hornady Critical, I'm not sure if it's critical defense or critical duty, I think defense. Either one of those loads should give you a tremendous 30-35 yard reach with that buckshot load. So I've learned a lot about shotguns, and I hope I've passed it to you in a way that you can use if that's what you're going to use for home defense. So folks, as always, I thank you very much for watching. I appreciate all the comments and the input I get. If you like what I'm doing here, give me a thumbs up. Just in the last few weeks, the channel has really seemed to kind of take off. Viewership is up, and I'm getting subscribers, so I really appreciate what's going on out there. Thank you very much. Whatever choices you make, in the weapons that you're going to defend your life with. Just give them some common thought. Be safe out there.
Okay, we got them both here now. You ready? Bud got one. Ginger got one. Oh, she missed it. She usually gets them, doesn't she, Bud? Okay, girl, last one. You ready? You ready? Yeah! That's all there is till next time.